$500 billion. That is the announced budget. 2 mirrored walls, 500 meters tall, 170 kilometers long, cutting through the Saudi desert. 9 million residents, 0 cars, 0 carbon. As of June 2026, construction is suspended. 2.4 kilometers of foundation sits in the sand. No walls, no mirrors, no residents. The cost to finish, according to an internal audit leaked to the Wall Street Journal, $8.8 trillion. October 2017, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince unveils a plan called NEOM, a new region in the northwest corner of the kingdom, Tabuk province, 26,500 square kilometers, roughly the size of Belgium. The purpose: transform a country that runs on oil into one that runs on technology, tourism, and renewable energy. The vehicle: the Public Investment Fund, the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund. Nearly $1 trillion in assets under management. The budget for NEOM, $500 billion. NEOM is not one project. It is a portfolio. A floating octagonal industrial port called Oxagon. A desert ski resort at 2,600 meters elevation called Trohina. A luxury island in the Red Sea called Sindala. And the centerpiece, a city unlike anything ever attempted. January 10, 2021. The centerpiece gets a name. The Line. The concept: a single continuous structure, 170 kilometers long, 200 meters wide, 500 meters tall. 2 parallel mirrored buildings with an open-air corridor between them, stretching from the Gulf of Aqaba coast deep into the Tabuk desert. No roads, no cars, no carbon emissions. Everything powered by solar and wind. Every service within a 5-minute walk, not horizontally, but vertically through stacked urban layers. Population at full capacity, 9 million people. That is 25% of Saudi Arabia's entire population housed in one structure. Planned density, 260,000 people per square kilometer. For context, Manila, the densest city on Earth, has 44,000. The line was designed to be 6 times denser than the densest city that currently exists. The promotional video shows a gleaming canyon of glass. Light bouncing between mirrored facades. Gardens suspended hundreds of meters above the desert floor. Residents stepping from apartments into vertical parks. A high-speed train running beneath the structure, connecting the entire 170 kilometers length. AI managing everything: climate control, transport scheduling, energy distribution. A digital twin running the whole city in real time. The renders go viral. Architecture firms from 3 continents compete for design contracts. McKinsey, BCG, and Bain deploy large teams to the site. Delugan Meisel Associated Architects is appointed urban designer. Gensler handles city planning. Mott MacDonald takes city infrastructure. The world watches. The engineering logic is ambitious but internally coherent. A linear city eliminates sprawl. No roads means no emissions from private vehicles. Stacking services vertically reduces the urban footprint to 34 square kilometers for 9 million people. Traditional cities of the same population consume thousands. The mirrored facade reflects the surrounding desert landscape, making the structure dissolve visually into its environment. The open channel between the 2 walls creates natural airflow, a wind corridor that reduces the need for mechanical cooling. Below the inhabited floors, layers of infrastructure carry freight, utilities, data. Above, a roof membrane filters sunlight. The city is designed as a machine, every system integrated, every flow optimized. On paper, the logic holds. The problems start with physics. A 500 meters tall building is comparable to the world's tallest skyscrapers. The Burj Khalifa stands at 828 meters, Shanghai Tower at 632 meters. But those are point structures. A single tower with a radial foundation, engineered to handle wind loads from every direction at one fixed location. The line requires that same height sustained across 170 kilometers of varying geology. Desert rock, coastal sand, mountain foothills. Each kilometer brings a different substrate, different load-bearing capacity, different groundwater profile. The foundation engineering is not one problem repeated. It is 170 separate problems, each requiring site-specific analysis. Then the materials. The structure needs 4.8 million tons of steel for the superstructure alone. At peak procurement, NEOM consumes 1/5 of all the steel available on the global market. Saudi Arabia is not a major steel producer. Most of it has to be imported from China, from India, from Turkey. Each early module requires 3.5 million cubic meters of concrete. Concrete production requires water. The site is in a desert, hundreds of kilometers from any freshwater source. In the early stages, water is shipped to the construction site by tanker truck. Engineers acknowledge this is not a scalable solution, especially for a project whose central marketing claim is zero carbon. A $190 million concrete plant is approved. Capacity: 20,000 cubic meters per day. A desalination plant at Oxagon is planned to supply the water, but the desalination plant is still in early development when piling begins. The supply chain runs ahead of the infrastructure that is supposed to support it. Then the geometry. Researchers at the Vienna Complexity Science Hub run the numbers on the linear shape. In a linear city, the average distance between two residents is 57 kilometers. In a circular city of the same population and density, 2.9 kilometers. Each resident of the line has only 1.2% of the total population within walking distance. In a circular city, 24%. A single transit disruption on the central rail line immobilizes the entire city. There is no alternative route. The shape that was supposed to eliminate commuting creates the longest possible distances between inhabitants. The line is a form optimized for the render, not for the resident. April 2022. Workers break ground. Piling begins on the Phase 1 site near the coast, even though detailed design for the actual buildings has not been finalized. The schedule demands speed. The 2030 deadline is 8 years away. 9 million people are supposed to be living inside the structure by then. Workers drill foundation piles into the desert floor. Each pile, 2.5 to 3 meters in diameter, 70 meters long, up to 850 tons each. Some of the largest foundation piles ever driven anywhere in the world. On site, 60 piling rigs work around the clock. Workers install 60 to 65 piles per day. The piling operation is described by engineers as the largest ever attempted in a single construction project. Workers operate in temperatures that regularly exceed 45 degrees Celsius. Saudi labor law mandates work stoppages during peak afternoon heat from June to September. Enforcement is inconsistent. Workers arrive from South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, from the Philippines, from Indonesia. They live in purpose-built camps in the desert, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest city. They work under the kafala sponsorship system, which ties their visa to their employer. They cannot switch jobs. They cannot leave the country without permission. By mid-2024, the workforce on the NEOM site peaks at over 100,000 people. Workers excavate earth at a rate of 1 million cubic meters per week, the largest excavation project on the planet at the time. Workers pour green concrete raft slabs up to 8 meters thick. Workers position rebar cages inside pile casings that plunge 70 meters below the surface. Workers drive steel cage reinforcement into soft coastal ground near the marina. Workers weld modular substructure assemblies that arrive prefabricated and are lifted into place by crane. About 6,000 piles go into the ground across a 2-kilometer stretch of desert. The foundation work alone costs several $billions. Each module is supported by over 5,500 piles. Over 120 foundation piles are cast per week. The numbers are real. The pace is real. The work is real. Then the scope starts to shrink. The line was originally divided into 20 modules, self-contained urban segments, each with its own residential, commercial, and service layers. By mid-2023, that number drops to 12, then 7, then 4. By the end of 2023, it drops to 3. A senior construction manager later explains what this means. When the modules dropped to 3, the 6,000 piles already in the ground were in the wrong positions. They were sized and spaced for a design that no longer existed. Billions of dollars worth of foundations, drilled, poured, cured, for a building that kept changing shape above them. Workers had spent months driving piles into precise grid patterns. The grid no longer matched anything. The foundations are not wrong, they are orphaned. The marina presents a separate engineering problem. It sits on the inland side of the line, opposite the sea. Ships heading for the marina must pass through the line's buildings. Engineers design a 165-meter-wide waterway cutting through 500 meters tall structures. The foundation work for the marina begins in 2023. Workers move 1 million cubic meters of earth per week for the marina excavation alone. 9 contractors are engaged. But the buildings that the waterway is supposed to pass through have not been designed yet. Workers are building passages through walls that do not exist. The budget tells the rest. The original $500 billion was for all of NEOM, every sub-project combined. An internal audit leaked to the Wall Street Journal in March 2025 projects the cost of completing the line alone, just the line, at $8.8 trillion. Not billion, trillion. That is roughly 9 times Saudi Arabia's entire annual GDP. The PIF's cash reserves fall to $15 billion, a 6-year low. Oil prices sit below the level the kingdom needs to balance its budget. The PIF's investment portfolio underperforms expectations, and NEOM is not the only megaproject competing for the same pool of money. Qiddiya, the entertainment city, the Red Sea tourism development, Diriyah Gate, the Muqab, a massive cuboid building planned for Riyadh, cancelled outright. The kingdom is also building simultaneously for the 2030 World Expo and the 2034 FIFA World Cup. Something has to give. The PIF's governor tells Al Arabiya in April 2026, "The line would be good to have, but it's not a must. Compare this with what other countries have built for comparable money." China constructed 38,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in 15 years, the largest infrastructure build-out in human history, for roughly $600 billion total. Dubai built the Burj Khalifa, 828 meters, the tallest structure ever built, in 5 years, for $1.5 billion. Singapore built Changi Airport's Terminal 5, one of the most complex airport projects in the world, in under a decade. Saudi Arabia spent an estimated $50 to $64 billion across NEOM by early 2026. It produced 2.4 kilometers of foundation, roughly the distance from Marble Arch to Buckingham Palace. No superstructure, no facade, no transit system, no residence, no mirrors. September 16, 2025, PIF. Governor Yasser Al-Rumayyan formally suspends construction on the line pending a strategic review. The workforce is cut by 35%. Over 1,000 employees relocate from the remote Tabuk site to Riyadh. NEOM CEO Nadmi Al-Nasser is removed from his post. The PIF writes down $8 billion from its mega-project portfolio. Job postings for NEOM dropped 74.6% between January and December 2025, from 342 to 87. The Financial Times reports that the Crown Prince himself has privately accepted the original vision will be realized as something far smaller. January 2026. The Asian Winter Games, scheduled for the Trojana ski resort in 2029, are postponed indefinitely and relocated to Almaty, Kazakhstan. NEOM could not complete the facilities in time. Trojana, the desert ski resort at 2,600 meters, the one that was supposed to generate artificial snow year-round, loses its deadline and its credibility marker. March 2026. NEOM terminates over $6 billion in contracts. WeBuild's $4.7 billion dam and artificial lake project at Trojana cancelled. Eversende's structural steel contract for the Trojana ski village terminated. Hyundai's $1 billion tunnel contract for the line, a 12.5 kilometers underground section that was supposed to carry the transit system, cancelled. May 2026. WeBuild announces the termination of the Connector High-Speed Rail, a 57-kilometer rail link between Oxagon and the line. Work was 20% complete at the time of termination. Residual backlog, €1 billion. All WeBuild activities for NEOM are concluded. The exit is not free. Saudi Arabia budgets 60 billion riyals, $16 billion, to pay contractors for terminating NEOM agreements between 2026 and 2030. Standard Gulf construction contracts include termination for convenience clauses, full reimbursement for completed work plus demobilization costs, plus early termination fees. The deeper a project advances before cancellation, the closer the exit cost converges with the completion cost. The Kingdom has already spent $64 billion on NEOM. PIF's cash reserves, $15 billion, are smaller than the exit bill itself. Workers left. The piling rigs sit idle across a strip of leveled desert. The concrete batching plants are silent. Across 2.4 kilometers near the Red Sea coast, 6,000 foundation piles stand in the ground. No steel rises above them, no glass, no mirrors. The cores for the first modules are partially built, reinforced concrete columns climbing partway out of the ground. The outrigger beams that would have connected the cores to the facade never installed. The mirrored cladding that defined every promotional image, the glass surface that was supposed to reflect the desert back at itself, it exists only in renders. Standing at the edge of the construction zone, the view is flat. Desert in every direction. A trench line cut into the earth runs toward the horizon, visible on satellite imagery as a white scar across the Tabuk desert. That trench was the excavation corridor for 170 kilometers. It stretches far beyond where the foundation work stopped. The worker camps are still there. Row after row of prefabricated housing blocks, mess halls, medical clinics, all built for 100,000 people. The population is a fraction of that now. Workers who remained are reassigned to other NEOM sub-projects or sent home. Those on short-term contracts face sudden unemployment, far from their families, far from any city. Sindala, the luxury island, held a grand opening in October 2024. 65 super yachts in the marina. Alicia Keys performed. As of June 2026, the island remains closed to the general public. $4 billion over its original budget. 3 years behind schedule. Management transferred away from NEOM to Red Sea Global, a separate PIF entity. Trojana, stripped of its Winter Games. $6 billion in contracts cancelled. Oversight moved to the Ministry of Sport and Qiddiya Investment Company. Both projects are being detached from NEOM and handed to other organizations piece by piece. The only NEOM component that functions is the one furthest from the original headline vision. A green hydrogen plant at Oxagon, an $8.4 billion joint venture, 80% complete, 4 gigawatts of renewable solar and wind generation, designed to produce 600 tons of carbon-free hydrogen per day. Green ammonia exports are expected by mid-2027. It is an industrial facility in the desert. It works. It was never the part anyone talked about. PIF's April 2026 strategy reclassifies NEOM as a standalone pillar, the only project-specific ecosystem in the fund's entire portfolio. The other 5 pillars are organized by sector: tourism, urban development, manufacturing, industrials, clean energy. NEOM stands alone. The reclassification is a financial firewall. It separates NEOM's liabilities from everything else. The strategy imposes another 15% capital expenditure cut on top of $41 billion in reductions already underway. NEOM construction commitments fall from $71 billion to $30 billion, then lower still. The renders showed a mirrored canyon 170 kilometers long. 9 million people living inside a vertical city that reflected the desert back at itself. AI managing every system. No cars, no emissions. A revolution in how humans live. The satellite image shows 2.4 kilometers of concrete in the sand. $64 billion spent. $16 billion budgeted to walk away from contracts. $8.8 trillion to finish what was promised. Construction suspended. Workforce scattered. 6,000 piles in the ground with nothing above them. The mirrors never went up. Subscribe for more engineering stories.